She was just a maid cleaning an abandoned castle for double pay. What she didn't expect was to find the vampire king still living there, alone for 300 years. And when her blood revealed she was descended from the hunters who destroyed his kingdom, he should have killed her. Instead, he asked her to stay. The coin purse felt heavier than it should. Clara stared at the gold pieces glinting in her palm. Double wages, just as the steward promised. Enough to keep her mother warm through winter. Enough to buy medicine for her brother's cough. Enough to make her forget what everyone in the village whispered about Ravencourt Castle. "You're really going?" Old Martha grabbed her wrist at the tavern door, her fingers cold as iron. "Child, that place isn't abandoned. It's waiting." Clara pulled free gently. "It's just stone and dust, Martha. Ghosts don't pay rent." "Ghosts don't." Martha's voice dropped. "But what lives there isn't a ghost." The wind answered for Clara, howling through the village square like a hungry animal. Christmas Eve, and the snow fell so thick it erased the world. She wrapped her mother's shawl tighter and stepped into the white. The path to Ravencourt wasn't on any map. Clara followed the frozen river, her lantern casting wild shadows on the trees. The forest seemed to lean away from her destination, branches twisted like arthritic fingers pointing back toward safety. Then she saw it. Ravencourt Castle didn't rise from the valley, it crouched there. Black stone towers clawed at the sky, their peaks lost in storm clouds that seemed to orbit the structure like vultures. Every window was dark. Every wall was scarred. It looked less like a building and more like a wound in the landscape that had never healed. Clara's breath caught. For a moment, she understood why 12 servants had refused this job. But the coin purse was heavy, and Winter was hungry. She crossed the threshold. The moment her boot touched the castle's entrance hall, candles burst to life. Dozens of them, hundreds, lining the walls in sconces that hadn't held flame in centuries. The light was wrong. Too pale, too cold, casting shadows that moved against the flicker. "Hello." Clara's voice echoed through corridors that stretched into impossible darkness.
"I am Clara Finch."
"I was hired to." "I know why you're here." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Deep, ancient, and so tired it made Clara's chest ache. She spun and he was there. He stood at the top of the grand staircase, a figure carved from moonlight and old sorrow. Tall, impossibly so, with silver-white hair that fell past his shoulders. His clothes were formal, a black coat with silver threading, a high collar that framed a face too beautiful and too hollow to be human. His eyes were the color of blood diluted in water, pale red and distant. But it was his stillness that terrified her most. He didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't exist in the way living things should. "You're..." Clara's hand found the cross at her neck. "You're him. The Vampire King." Lucien, he descended the stairs without sound, each step a glide rather than a footfall. "Though I haven't been called a king in 300 years. Kings need kingdoms. I only have ruins." He stopped 10 feet away, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. Not hunger, not anger. Something worse, recognition. "You shouldn't be here, child." His words were careful, measured, as if speaking pained him. "This place remembers blood. It drinks it. The stones, the shadows, even the snow outside. All of it built on graves." Clara's instinct screamed to run. But she'd come too far, and the coin purse was too heavy. "I'm here to clean," she said, forcing her voice steady. "The steward hired me for a week. After Christmas, I'll leave, and you'll never see me again." Lucien's laugh was soft and broken.
"A week.
You think you can survive a week? I've survived worse than dust and cobwebs." "I'm not talking about dust." He moved then, faster than her eye could follow, and suddenly he was beside her. Clara gasped, stumbling back, but he didn't advance. Instead, he reached past her to the wall, where a portrait hung beneath layers of grime. With one pale finger, he traced a line through the dirt, revealing painted eyes. A woman's face emerged, regal, fierce, wearing a crimson gown and a crown of black roses. Her expression was caught between a smile and a snarl. "This castle doesn't just remember blood," Lucien whispered. "It remembers her. My queen. My curse. The reason everything fell." Clara stared at the portrait, and something impossible happened. The woman's eyes looked exactly like her own. Same shape, same color, same way the light caught in them, turning brown to amber to gold. Clara had seen her reflection enough times to know this wasn't similarity. It was identity. "That's not possible," she breathed. Lucien had already turned away, moving back toward the shadows. "Many impossible things happen in Ravencourt. By morning, you'll believe every one of them." "Wait," Clara called after him. "If you don't want me here, why let me stay?" He paused at the edge of the candlelight, half his face illuminated, half lost to darkness. "Because," he said quietly, "I haven't heard a human heartbeat in this castle since the night I killed my own." Then he was gone, dissolved into the shadows like smoke. Clara stood alone in the entrance hall, surrounded by too many candles and too much silence. The portrait's eyes seemed to follow her. The coin purse felt lighter now, as if the weight had transferred to her chest. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, something ancient stirred. And Clara realized with sudden, perfect clarity, she hadn't been hired to clean this castle. She'd been summoned. Clara didn't sleep that first night. She'd found a servant's quarters on the second floor, a small room with a bed that smelled of lavender and dust. The sheets were ancient but clean, as if someone had preserved them perfectly in time. She lay there, listening to the castle breathe. Because it did breathe. The walls expanded and contracted with rhythms that matched no wind. Footsteps echoed in empty corridors. Doors opened and closed in rooms she hadn't entered. And beneath it all, a sound like distant singing, wordless, mournful, wrong. When dawn finally came, it barely touched Ravencourt. The light turned gray instead of gold. Clara began her work in the East Wing, scrubbing floors that hadn't seen care in centuries. She hummed while she worked, old songs her mother taught her, simple melodies about spring and growing things. It helped drown out the castle's whispers. She didn't see Lucien, but she felt him watching. It started as a prickle on her neck while she dusted the library, a coldness when she entered the ballroom, shadows that moved wrong in her peripheral vision, always retreating when she turned. He was there, just beyond sight, observing her like she was something strange and fragile. On the third day, she found him. The portrait gallery stretched the length of the North Tower, dozens of paintings in gilded frames, all facing a single throne at the far end. Clara had avoided this room, sensing its importance, but curiosity won. Lucien sat on the throne, motionless as a statue, staring at the largest portrait. The Queen in crimson. She was beautiful, Clara said softly, announcing herself. Lucien didn't startle. Perhaps he'd heard her coming. Perhaps he'd wanted to be found. She was fury incarnate, he replied. Beauty was just the disguise. Clara moved closer, studying the painting in daylight. The Queen's expression held something wild, not madness, but barely contained violence. Her hands gripped the throne's arms like she might tear them free. The crown sat crooked on her head, as if she'd seized it rather than earned it. What was her name? Isabeau. The word left his mouth like a confession. She ruled beside me for 50 years. Not as a consort, as an equal. She was fiercer than any warrior, smarter than any scholar. When she walked into a room, even ancient vampires bowed. You loved her. I worshipped her, Lucien's voice cracked. Until the night I discovered what she'd been doing in the catacombs beneath this castle. The rituals. The sacrifices. She wasn't just drinking blood. She was collecting it. Building power for something I couldn't understand. Clara felt cold. What did you do? What any fool in love would do. He finally looked away from the portrait, meeting Clara's eyes. I confronted her. She laughed. Said I was weak for limiting myself to survival when we could have dominion. That night, the hunters came, the Crimson Purge, they called it. Someone had betrayed us, revealed our location. In the chaos, He stopped, his pale face somehow paler. You killed her, Clara whispered. I killed everyone. His hands gripped the throne arms exactly as Isabos did in the portrait. Every vampire in this castle. Every servant who stayed loyal. When the bloodlust finally cleared, I stood alone in a palace of corpses, and the hunters were gone. They'd gotten what they wanted, our destruction, without losing a single man. Clara's heart hammered. But you survived. This isn't survival. Lucien rose from the throne, and Clara saw how thin he was beneath the elegant clothes, how his skin stretched over bone like paper over wire. This is punishment. I'm bound to Ravencourt until I can undo what was done. But blood spilled can't be unspilled. So I wait, century after century, alone with the ghosts and the guilt. Clara stared at the portrait again, at Isabel's eyes that looked so much like her own. A thought formed, terrible and impossible. Why do I look like her? Lucien went very still. You noticed. How could I not? Clara's voice shook. Those are my eyes, Lucien. My face. It's like looking at a mirror twisted through time. He moved toward her, and this time, she didn't retreat. He stopped inches away, studying her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I've asked myself that question for 3 days, he said quietly. 3 days of watching you move through these halls, humming songs that sound like prayers, cleaning death from every corner. You even walk like her. That same stubborn stride. That's impossible. So is a maid brave enough to sleep in a vampire's castle? His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like the memory of one. Maybe you're her reincarnation. Maybe you're her descendant through some forgotten bloodline. Or maybe. He trailed off, but Clara heard the unspoken thought. Maybe you're here to finish what she started. The library was Clara's favorite room in Ravencourt. Unlike the rest of the castle, it felt alive. Thousands of books breathing together, their pages whispering secrets when the wind slipped through cracks in the stone. She'd spent the morning organizing volumes that had fallen from their shelves, creating small towers of forgotten knowledge. She was reshelving a tome on lunar cycles when she noticed the table. It sat in the center of the room, carved from a single piece of black wood. Strange symbols covered its surface. Circles within circles, connected by lines that hurt to follow. At the center, a deep groove had been cut into the wood, forming a crest she didn't recognize, a wolf devouring a rose, crowned with thorns. Clara ran her fingers over the carving, feeling the craftsmanship. Her mother had taught her to appreciate good work, even in dark things. The splinter bit deep. She jerked her hand back, watching blood well from her index finger. A single drop fell, ruby bright, landing perfectly in the center of the crest. The library screamed. Not with sound, with pressure. The air compressed around Clara, squeezing her lungs, making her ears pop. The symbols on the table ignited with pale fire, crawling across the wood like burning veins. The blood drop didn't soak into the grain. It spread, filling every groove of the crest until the wolf glowed crimson. Then the temperature plummeted. Clara's breath came out in frozen clouds. The windows iced over instantly, frost spreading in patterns that looked like grasping hands. Every candle in the library gutted itself, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the table's eerie glow. And Lucien was there. He materialized from shadow, eyes burning red, fangs fully extended. This wasn't the melancholy king she'd been talking to. This was the predator beneath the gentleman's clothes. His face had shifted, become something angular and wrong, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. But he wasn't looking at her throat. He was staring at the table, horror plain on his inhuman features. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Where did you get that blood? I cut myself, I didn't mean. That crest. Lucien moved to the table, keeping careful distance from the glowing symbols. Do you know what that is? Clara shook her head, cradling her bleeding finger. "It's the mark of the Thornkeepers," his voice was hollow. "The Hunter clan that led the Crimson Purge. The family that swore a blood oath to exterminate every vampire in these lands. The people who burned this castle, and everyone in it." Clara's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I'm just a maid. My family has always been." Touch the crest again. "What?" "Your blood activated it. It recognized you." Lucien's red eyes found hers. "Touch it again. Let's see what your bloodline remembers." With trembling fingers, Clara pressed her palm against the glowing wolf. The library vanished. She stood in the same room, but 300 years earlier. The books were pristine, the table polished, and the air smelled of wine and smoke. A man stood before her, tall, scarred, wearing armor marked with a Thornkeeper crest. He looked like her father, her grandfather, her own face staring back through time. "For God and the innocent," the man said, raising a silver blade. "We cleanse this den of demons." The vision shifted. Clara saw Ravencourt as it was, magnificent, lit by 1,000 candles, filled with vampires in elegant clothes dancing in the ballroom. She saw Isabeau on her throne, laughing at something Lucien whispered in her ear. Then she saw the Thornkeepers pour through the gates like a plague. Silver weapons, holy water, wooden stakes. The vampires fought back, but they'd been betrayed. Their usual protections had been sabotaged. One by one, they fell. Clara watched her ancestor cut through them, his face blank with religious conviction. She saw him corner Isabeau in the portrait gallery. The queen didn't beg. She attacked, fast as lightning, but the man was ready. His blade caught her throat, and crimson painted the walls. As Isabeau fell, she locked eyes with Clara across centuries and smiled. "The debt passes down," Isabeau whispered. "Blood for blood, life for life. One day, a Thornkeeper will return to finish what was started. And when they do..." The vision shattered. Clara gasped, stumbling back from the table. The glow faded. The library returned to its usual gloom. But her hand was marked now. The Thornkeeper crest burned into her palm like a brand, faint but visible. Lucien stood across from her, no longer monstrous, just infinitely sad. "Now you understand," he said quietly. "You're not here by accident, Clara Finch. Your bloodline sent you. Whether you knew it or not, you came to Ravencourt to complete your family's holy mission." Clara stared at the mark on her palm, then at Lucien. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't." "It doesn't matter what you knew," Lucien turned away. "The castle knows. The blood knows. And now, so do we." He walked toward the shadows, and Clara heard the words he didn't say. "You came here to kill me." Lucien didn't speak to her for 2 days. Clara continued cleaning, but the castle had changed. Doors that once opened freely now stuck. Candles refused to light in rooms she entered. The walls seemed to lean inward, watching her with the weight of 300 years of anger. She deserved it. Her family had done this. Her blood carried genocide. On the second night, she couldn't bear the silence anymore. Clara found the chapel by accident, a small door behind a tapestry in the west wing. Inside, the space was surprisingly intact. Wooden pews still stood in neat rows, though covered in dust. Stained glass windows depicted saints she didn't recognize, their faces strange and beautiful. The altar had been overturned, but Clara could write it.
So she did.
She worked through the night, scrubbing centuries of neglect from the stone floor. She polished the silver candlesticks until they gleamed. She carefully cleaned each window, revealing colors that caught the moonlight, blues and golds and deep crimson reds. By dawn, the chapel looked almost holy again. "What are you doing?"
Clara's phone.
Lucien stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hall's dim light. He looked thinner somehow, as if grief had weight, and he'd been carrying more of it. "I'm rebuilding," Clara said simply. "I can't undo what my family did. I can't bring back the people they killed. But I can." I can try to restore what they destroyed. This is a vampire's castle, Clara, not a church. It's both, she gestured to the windows. Look at them. Those aren't Christian saints, they're something older. Vampire martyrs, maybe? People who sacrifice themselves for something bigger? Lucien moved closer, studying the windows he probably hadn't looked at in centuries. His expression softened. The founders. Vampires who chose to protect humans instead of feed on them. Isabeau thought they were fools. She had these windows made to mock them. But you kept them. I kept everything. He touched one of the polished candlesticks. Even the things that hurt to remember. Clara took a breath, gathering courage. My family swore to hunt your kind. Their sins should have ended with them. But they didn't. They passed down through blood, through duty, through me. I can't change that. But I can choose what I do next. And what will you choose? To end the debt differently. She held up her marked palm. Not by death, but by rebuilding what they destroyed. Not by finishing their holy mission, but by proving it was wrong. Lucien stared at her, and for the first time since the library, something like hope flickered in his eyes. You think you can redeem centuries of murder with soap and good intentions? No, Clara met his gaze steadily. But I can start, and maybe that's enough. Over the following days, something shifted. Lucien began to teach her. He showed her the old vampire customs, how they'd once lived alongside humans, acting as guardians of villages in exchange for willing blood donations. He explained their laws, their art, their poetry. Vampires weren't just predators. They'd been scholars, artists, protectors. We had purpose once, Lucien said, showing her a book of their treaties with human settlements. Before the church decided we were demons. Before the Thornkeepers turned protection into propaganda. Clara read the treaties, her chest aching. My family destroyed all this. They made you into the monsters they needed you to be. And Isabeau proved them right. Lucien's voice went hard. She became exactly what they feared. Maybe she was always that way, and I was too blind to see. They were in the library when Clara noticed Lucien suddenly go rigid. What is it? Riders, he moved to the window. Coming up the valley. Armed. Clara joined him, peering into the snowy twilight. 3 horses climbed the path to Ravencourt, their riders carrying torches and wearing familiar armor. The Thornkeeper crest gleamed on their chests.
No, Clara, breathe.
How did they know? Lucien's laugh was bitter. Your blood activated the crest. It probably sent a signal, a beacon calling to your family. The hunters always know when one of their own finds a vampire. Then I'll send them away. I'll tell them. Tell them what? That you've befriended the monster? That you're betraying your sacred duty. Lucien backed away from the window. You need to leave, Clara. Before it's too late. Before they make you choose. I've already chosen. You don't understand what they'll do. What they'll make you do, his voice cracked.
Please.
Just go. But Clara stood firm, watching the riders approach. The lead horseman carried a banner that whipped in the wind, the Thornkeeper wolf, devouring its roes. And suddenly, Clara realized, this wasn't just about hunters finding their prey. This was about her family finally calling in a debt she never knew she owed. The lead rider dismounted before the castle gates with practiced ease. He was young, maybe 30, with Clara's same dark hair and amber eyes. He wore the Thornkeeper armor like a second skin, silver crosses hanging from his belt alongside vials of what could only be holy water. When he smiled up at the castle, it didn't reach his eyes. Cousin Clara, he called out, his voice warm and false. What a relief to find you alive. Clara's blood went cold. She'd never seen this man before in her life. She met him at the entrance, blocking the doorway. The other 2 riders stayed mounted, hands on their weapons. Up close, she could see the family resemblance, the same sharp jawline, the same way his mouth curved. But where her features spoke of kindness worn down by poverty, his spoke of conviction sharpened into cruelty. I don't know you, Clara said flatly. Thaddeus Thornkeep, Church Inquisitor, he bowed with mocking formality. Your mother's cousin's son. We've never met because you're branch of the family. Well, let's say they tried to hide from their sacred duty. But blood calls to blood, Clara. When the crest activated, we knew. A Thornkeeper had found the beast of Ravencourt. There's no beast here. Just an old man and older stones. Thaddeus's smile sharpened. The vampire made you say that, of course. They're skilled at manipulation. It's how they've survived. But don't worry, cousin. We're here to save you. We'll cleanse this place, and you'll be free. I don't need saving. The crest on your palm says otherwise. His eyes dropped to her hand, still faintly marked. You touched the blood table. Saw the truth. You know what this creature did, what his kind are capable of. Our ancestor died, ending their reign of terror. You should be honored to finish his work. Clara felt Lucien's presence behind her, a cold shadow at her back. She didn't turn, didn't acknowledge him. If Thaddeus saw weakness, saw connection, he'd exploit it. Your ancestor, Clara said slowly, slaughtered people who'd protected human villages for centuries. I've read the treaties, the old agreements. Vampires weren't monsters until we made them into monsters. Thaddeus's smile vanished. Careful, cousin. That sounds dangerously like heresy. It sounds like the truth. The truth. He stepped closer, voice dropping. The truth is that thing behind you has lived for centuries on stolen blood. The truth is his queen conducted dark rituals that would have consumed entire kingdoms. The truth is our family stopped them before innocent people died. And the truth is, his hand moved to his sword. You were sent here, whether you knew it or not, to finish the mission. Sent. Clara's mind raced. What do you mean, sent? You really don't know? Thaddeus laughed, cruel and cold. Who do you think hired you, Clara? Who offered double wages for a simple cleaning job? The steward works for the church. We've been watching Ravencourt for years, waiting for the vampire to show himself. But he never left, never hunted, never gave us legal cause to strike. So we sent him something irresistible, a Thornkeeper descendant, innocent and unaware, carrying the blood he couldn't resist investigating. The world tilted. Clara grabbed the doorframe for support. You used me as bait. We gave you purpose. Thaddeus's voice turned gentle, which was somehow worse. Your family lives in poverty because they rejected their calling. But you can change that, Clara. Help us end the vampire, and the church will reward you beyond measure. Your mother will have medicine. Your brother will have doctors. You'll never scrub floors again. Behind her, Lucien was silent. But Clara could feel his stillness, the way he'd retreated into himself. He'd expected this. Maybe he'd expected it from the moment she arrived. And if I refuse? Clara asked quietly. Then you're complicit in his crimes. Thaddeus's hand fully gripped his sword now. Harboring a vampire is punishable by death, cousin. Even for family. The other riders shifted, torches raised. The light painted everything in shades of orange and black, fire and shadow, just like the old stories. Clara thought of the chapel she'd cleaned, the treaties she'd read, the portrait of Isabeau with her eyes, her face, her fury. She thought of Lucien alone for 3 centuries, punishing himself more thoroughly than any hunter could. And she thought of her mother's words, spoken long ago. Sometimes courage isn't fighting. Sometimes it's just refusing to run. Clara straightened, meeting her cousin's eyes. Then I guess, she said clearly, you'll have to go through me first. Thaddeus's expression flickered, surprise, then disappointment, then cold resolve. So be it, cousin. The church will mourn another fallen Thornkeeper. He drew his sword. But the vampire dies tonight. The attack came at midnight. Thaddeus hadn't been bluffing. The 3 hunters returned with 12 more, surrounding Ravencourt like a noose tightening. They carried torches that turned the snow orange, their flames reflecting off silver blades and crosses that gleamed with deadly purpose. Clara stood in the grand hall, watching through the windows as the circle closed. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't run. Beside her, Lucien was preternaturally still.
You should hide, she said.
There must be secret passages, places they can't. I've been hiding for 300 years, his voice was quiet, resigned. Maybe it's time to stop. Don't talk like that, Clara grabbed his arm. Cold, so cold, like marble. We can fight them. You're stronger than any human you could. I could kill them. Yes, Lucien's red eyes found hers. Every single one. It would take me minutes. But then I'd be exactly what they say I am. Another monster proving the Thornkeepers right. The first torch hit the east wing. Fire spread across Ancient Wood like a living thing, hungry and bright. They're burning it, Clara whispered. They're burning everything. More torches followed, through windows, over walls, into courtyards. Ravencourt began to glow from within, 3 centuries of history turning to ash. The hunters' voices rose in a hymn, religious words twisted into a battle cry. Then they breached the doors. Thaddeus led the charge, sword raised, holy water splashing from vials at his belt. The hunters spread through the halls like a plague, smashing furniture, tearing down tapestries, destroying everything they touched. Clara ran to intercept them, but Lucien was faster. He moved like smoke, appearing between the hunters and their targets. But he didn't attack, he deflected. When a blade came for his throat, he twisted it aside. When holy water splashed toward him, he dodged, letting it scar the stones instead. Every movement was defensive, protective, designed to stop without destroying. He's not fighting, one hunter shouted, confused. Coward vampire, another screamed, lunging with a wooden stake. Lucien caught the man's wrist, held him gently, then pushed him back, unharmed but humiliated. I won't kill you, Lucien said clearly. Not anymore. Not ever again. Clara saw it then, really saw it. This wasn't the monster from the stories. This was a man who'd spent 300 years learning that violence only created more violence, that revenge was a circle with no exit. He was choosing to break the cycle, even if it killed him. But Thaddeus saw weakness. The beast shows mercy, he roared to his men. That means he's afraid. Press forward. For God and the innocent. The hunters rallied, pushing deeper into the castle. The fire spread faster, smoke choking the halls. Clara coughed, eyes watering, searching desperately for something, anything that could help. That's when she saw it, a door she'd never noticed before, hidden behind a burning tapestry. Unlike everything else, it was sealed with chains and locks, marked with warnings in a language she didn't know. Lucien, she called. What's down there? His face went pale, paler than usual.
Clara, no, don't.
But she was already running, tearing away the burning fabric, her hands blistering on the hot metal chains. Something pulled her forward, an instinct she didn't understand. The same force that had called her to touch the blood table, that had activated her family's crest. The locks broke at her touch, recognizing Thornkeeper blood. The door swung open to reveal stairs descending into absolute darkness. Cold air rushed up, carrying the scent of old magic and older death. Clara grabbed a torch and descended, Lucien's protests fading above her. The crypt was circular, carved from living rock. And at its center sat a coffin of black glass. Not Isabeau's body. Clara could see that immediately. Instead, the coffin was filled with something liquid and dark, reflecting the torchlight like oil. She moved closer, and the surface rippled, forming images. She saw the crimson purge through Isabeau's eyes. Saw Thaddeus's ancestor, her own blood, strike down unarmed vampires who'd been betrayed, their protections sabotaged from within. Saw him corner Isabeau not in honorable combat, but after she'd been poisoned with something that weakened her. Saw him smile as he killed her, whispering, "Your kind will never know peace." But then the vision shifted. Clara saw Isabeau's final spell, blood magic woven in her dying breath. A curse that bound Lucien to the castle, yes, but also bound the Thornkeepers to him. Generation after generation, one descendant would be drawn here, their blood calling to his, forced to complete the cycle. Unless someone broke it. Clara reached toward the mirror coffin, understanding blooming like a terrible flower. Her marked palm touched the surface. The world exploded in crimson light. The vision shattered, sending shockwaves through the castle. Above, she heard hunters scream. The fire guttered and died instantly, snuffed by whatever power she'd unleashed. And Clara felt it, her blood and Lucien's, their fates tangling together like threads in a tapestry. The curse had recognized her. And now it would make her choose. The crimson light faded, leaving Clara gasping on the crypt floor. Her palm burned, not the faint mark from before, but a searing brand that glowed with its own terrible luminescence. The Thornkeeper crest writhed on her skin, twisting into something new. The wolf and rose intertwined, neither devouring nor being devoured, but locked together in eternal balance. Lucien appeared at the crypt entrance, moving faster than thought. "What did you do?" "I saw it," Clara's voice shook. "I saw everything. Isabeau's curse. It wasn't just binding you here. It was binding my family to keep coming back, generation after generation, forced to kill you or be killed. She made sure the cycle would never end." "I know," Lucien knelt beside her. "I've known for 300 years. Why do you think I never left? Breaking the curse means one of us has to die," Clara finished, reading it in the magic still pulsing through her veins. "Either a Thornkeeper kills you, ending your immortality and the castle's power, or you kill a Thornkeeper, breaking the blood oath and freeing yourself. That's the choice Isabeau left. Violence or violence." Above them, footsteps thundered. The hunters were coming. "Then I choose violence," Thaddeus's voice echoed down the stairs, cold and certain. "And I choose it gladly." He descended into the crypt, sword drawn, 5 hunters at his back. The blade gleamed with silver, its edge inscribed with prayers that made Lucien flinch. Holy weapons, blessed for one purpose: vampire execution. "Step away from him, Clara," Thaddeus gestured with the sword. "You've seen the curse.
You understand now."
This has to end." Clara stood, placing herself between Lucien and the blade. "You're right. It does have to end. But not like this. There is no other way. Isabeau made sure of that." Isabeau was wrong. Clara's voice rang clear in the stone chamber. She thought violence was the only language anyone understood. She built a curse on that belief. But curses are just spells, Thaddeus. And spells can be rewritten. "You're not a witch." "No, but I'm a Thornkeeper." My blood activated the table. "Open this crypt." Touched Isabeau's final working, Clara held up her glowing palm. "The curse recognized me as the one meant to end this. It's waiting for my choice." Thaddeus's eyes narrowed. "Then choose our family. Choose the oath sworn in righteousness. Kill the vampire and claim your birthright." Behind her, Clara felt Lucien tense. She didn't turn, didn't look at him. If she saw his face, saw 300 years of loneliness and grief in those red eyes, she might waver. "Tell me something, cousin," Clara said softly. "In all those church records, all those Thornkeeper histories, did anyone ever ask why Isabeau turned dark? Why she started the rituals?" "Because she was evil. Because she was scared." Clara's voice grew stronger. "I saw it in the vision. The church was already turning against vampires, spreading fear, breaking treaties. Isabeau's rituals weren't about conquest. They were about survival. Desperate, wrong, terrible survival. But our ancestor didn't care about the why. He just wanted the glory of slaying monsters." "You're defending her?" Thaddeus stepped closer, fury darkening his face. "She would have destroyed kingdoms. And our family destroyed her before finding out if that was true." Clara's shout echoed. "They killed her, killed everyone, and then wrote history to make themselves heroes. But I've read the treaties, Thaddeus. I've cleaned this castle, walked these halls, seen what vampires built alongside humans. And I've spent days with the last survivor, watching him choose mercy over revenge again and again. Mercy? Thaddeus laughed bitterly. He's manipulated you, just like Isabeau manipulated him. You think you're special, but you're just another tool. No, Clara's palm blazed brighter. I'm the one who chooses how this ends. And I choose neither. She turned to Lucien, finally meeting his eyes. The curse demands blood for blood, death for death. But what if we give it something else? What if a Thornkeeper chooses to stay willingly, to live here not as a maid or a hunter, but as a guardian? To rebuild what was destroyed, to prove the cycle can be broken. Lucien's expression cracked. Clara, you don't know what you're offering. I'm offering forgiveness. She took his cold hand in hers. The debt was never yours to pay, Lucien. It was never mine either. But together, maybe we can pay it differently. The crypt shuddered. Magic swirled around them, crimson and silver, blood and moonlight. The curse was listening, considering, weighing this impossible third option. Thaddeus roared and lunged, blade aimed for Lucien's heart. But Clara's marked palm flashed, and the sword shattered like glass. The curse had made its choice. It chose her. The magic burst outward like a wave. Thaddeus and his hunters were thrown back, not violently but firmly, as if the castle itself had exhaled. They hit the crypt walls and slumped there, weapons clattering uselessly to the stone floor. The silver dust from the shattered sword glittered in the air like snow. Clara felt the curse unravel inside her, its threads loosening and reforming into something new. The burning in her palm faded to a warm pulse, still marked, but no longer painful. The wolf and rose on her skin had stopped struggling. They simply were, together, balanced. Lucien stared at her, wonder breaking through centuries of carefully maintained numbness. You freed it. Not freed, Clara looked at the black glass coffin, watching the dark liquid inside turn clear as spring water. Transformed. The curse wanted blood and death, because that's all Isabeau knew at the end. But it was powered by choice, and I chose differently. Above them, the castle groaned. Not in pain, but like someone stretching after a long sleep. The walls brightened. The oppressive weight lifted. Even the air tasted different, less like a tomb and more like a home. Thaddeus struggled to his feet, face pale with shock and something that might have been fear. This isn't over, cousin. The church will hear of this. They'll send more hunters, more soldiers. Let them come, Clara's voice was calm. They'll find a castle being restored, not a monster's lair. They'll find a Thornkeeper honoring her family's true oath to protect the innocent. And if they have eyes to see, they'll find proof that their holy war was built on lies. She gestured to the now clear coffin, where images still swirled. Evidence of the treaties, the partnerships, the truth that had been buried under 300 years of propaganda. Thaddeus looked at the visions, and something in his face crumbled. The certainty, the righteousness, it all drained away, leaving just a tired man holding broken beliefs. You're throwing away everything, he whispered. Your family, your future, your soul. I'm saving my soul, Clara corrected gently. And maybe yours too, if you'll let me. The hunters can leave peacefully, Thaddeus. No one has to die today. The cycle ends here. For a long moment, Thaddeus stood frozen. Then, slowly, he nodded to his men. They gathered their broken weapons and retreated up the stairs, moving like sleepwalkers. At the entrance, Thaddeus paused. They won't all see it your way, he said quietly. Some will call this betrayal. Then they'll be wrong. Clara met his eyes, family eyes, the same amber as her own. But they'll be alive to be wrong. That's more than our ancestors gave the vampires. Thaddeus's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Then he was gone, leading his hunters into the snowy night. Clara and Lucien stood alone in the crypt as silence settled like a blessing. You should have let me die, Lucien said finally. It would have been easier. Easier isn't the same as right, Clara turned to him. And you've suffered enough, Lucien. 300 years of self-punishment for crimes you tried to stop. That's enough. What happens now? Clara considered. The castle was still half ruined, the village still feared it, and she'd just made herself an outcast from her family. But the curse was broken, the cycle ended, and for the first time since entering Ravencourt, she felt like she could breathe. Now, she said, we rebuild. Properly. Together. 6 weeks later, Christmas Eve. Snow fell gently on Ravencourt, but the castle no longer looked like a wound in the landscape. Lights glowed in the windows, warm, welcoming. Smoke rose from chimneys that had been cold for centuries. The villagers still whispered, but some of the fear had faded. A few had even brought offerings, bread, wine, small tokens of cautious peace. In the dining hall, Clara set 2 places at the long table. Simple fare, fresh bread, cheese, wine from the castle's restored cellars. Not a feast, but enough. More than enough. Lucien entered, moving with something that almost resembled ease. The hollow look had faded from his face. He'd never be human, never be warm, but he was no longer a ghost either. You don't have to do this every week, he said, though his tone was fond. Yes, I do, Clara gestured to the chair. It's Christmas Eve, and I once told a lonely vampire king to come have dinner at my place. Well, this is my place now, too. So sit. He sat, a smile playing at his lips, the first real smile she'd seen from him. They ate in comfortable silence, 2 souls who'd stopped running from their pasts. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but it no longer felt like mourning. It felt like forgiveness. And in Ravencourt Castle, after 300 years of darkness, that was enough to call a miracle. The end.